Awesome. All righty. So where we're going to kick off is on page 3. And the joke I'm going to make is like, if you're having a hard time finding it, because we're joking about how hard it is to find the Roman numerals, you just go to page 1, and then you flip the page, page 3. Uh, but I will do a little bit of, I know it's like, ooh, page can count. There are miracles. I used to be a math tutor. That should scare all of you. But what happened last week? What were we talking about last week? So we're going to pick up this week on the paragraph that says, I had arrived. But what happened for Bill Wilson to arrive? So let's go a little bit into kind of the history. So Bill Wilson, he worked as an investigator for a surety company. And we saw that at the very top of page 2. He was an investigator for a surety company. And what that meant is a surety company was a company that would give out loans to other businesses. And he would investigate to see if, hey, are they going to pay their money back? Are they going to pay their money back? Are they a wise investment? You know what I mean? And so he had some experience in that. And then he goes and gets involved in Wall Street. And he's like, ooh, this is exciting. You know, the chaos, millions being made, millions lost. He's like, ooh, I am here for that. Like he is excited. And so he gets involved in this. And so what happens is he's got this idea. And his idea, it is a genius idea. His idea is to go and to investigate these companies because the people in Wall Street, they're kind of up in New York on Wall Street, and they're gambling on these companies. They don't know if it's a good investment or not. And he's like, why don't I go and investigate them? And so what Bill Wilson is doing is he's going to combine his drinking and he's going to combine this idea to forge a weapon like a sword, to hack, to slash, to cut through life, to prove that he is important. And so that's what he's doing. And so he and his wife, they hop in a motorcycle and they go up and down the whole eastern United States, all up and down the eastern seaboard, and they investigate these companies. And it was a genius idea. And just like you couldn't show up to any major company and be like, hey, can I see the books? Let me know what's up. They'd be like, ma'am, I need to ask you to leave. You're making a scene. I get called ma'am way less that I've been sober because ma'am for me was always followed by you're making a scene, you know. Now I don't get ma'amed very much. But so what he would do is he would go and he would investigate by, building relationships. He would build these relationships and he would go to the bars where some of these people were drinking. And there's a bit of that saying that, loose lips sink ships. And so we would go and investigate in that way. And it worked. So where we're picking up on page 3 is middle paragraph for the next few years. Fortune through money and applause my way. And that's where we're picking up. But one of the things I want to point out is so he's got like fortune, he's got applause. People are, like, yeah, here it is. You know what I'm saying? He's rocking, he's rolling, it's going well. But often as we go through Bill's story, we have this desire to talk about his ego. Like, oh, Bill, he thinks he's so great. But I want to point something out. It says fortune through money and applause my way, not my ingenious ideas. I think he's able to have a little bit of humility that this was, some luck. This was some grace. And we're going to see that as we continue on. Now it says, I had arrived. Now I had arrived. Oh, this is an infamous line because highlighted, underlining, I had arrived. We're going to see how quickly that deteriorates. We're going to see how we go from I had arrived to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. But I had arrived is an important line because who here thought that maybe I couldn't be an alcoholic or I couldn't be an addict or I couldn't be a compulsive, whatever brings you to this study because no, but I had success before. No, but I was a successful business person, or I was a successful mother. I was a good mother. I was a good, you know what I mean? I had arrived. Had I ever had a point in my life where I had arrived? I have not. That's not me. I was not showing up and arriving, but a lot of people have. And keep in mind, alcohol And this work, it's working together for him. So it says, my judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. So they're investing. It was a genius idea. And it says the great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. And the great boom is the 1920s was this huge period of economic boom, especially in the United States. So there was a lot of money. There was a lot of money being spent. There was a lot of opulence. It was fancy pants McGee over here. You know what I'm saying? That's I am clearly a historian. You know what I'm saying? Fancy pants McGee. Alrighty. um, but this next line is also important. It says, drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. And if you ask anyone who does not have this illness, what is important to you? What are we going to say? Well, the people who don't have this illness and that are being honest and are able to be honest, they're going to say, maybe my work is really important to me. Maybe my health is really important to me. Maybe family is really important to me. Maybe, I've got these goals and these dreams. These things are really important to me. Maybe it's religion. Maybe it's certain values. These are what is important to me. But what is important to him is drinking. Drinking is important. Now, it goes on to say drinking and exhilarating part of my life. So what is exhilarating? Well, we can look at some hobbies like windsurfing and skydiving. That's probably exhilarating. I'm trying to think of like exciting activities because I don't get out of the house much. So I'm like, oh, going for a car ride. It's exhilarating, which is not everyone's experience. But things like traveling, going on adventures. Maybe there's something that's exhilarating about getting outside of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Doing things that are exciting and interesting. But exhilarating, that idea that alcohol is exhilarating. What does that tell me? That tells me that alcohol is giving me that sense, or giving Bill and I, the two of us, we're homies, that sense of ease and comfort. You know what I mean? And do you know what I mean when I talk about alcohol or drugs or whatever it is that brings you to this study, that it is important and that it is exhilarating, because I'm after that feeling. Non-alcoholics aren't going to refer to alcohol as important and exhilarating. They're going to be like, it's social and expensive, probably. Oh, maybe that's just me. I was a bottom shelf drinker. Anywho, so it says there was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. And if you think about this 1920s, this great boom of the jazz places, you can think about like any sort of like The Great Gatsby, any sort of movie set in the 1920s. They had the flapper dresses, they had jazz music. It was exciting. The alcohol was flowing. The money was flowing. It was this great economic boom and everything's going well. Bill Wilson had arrived. So it says so there was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. And it says scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends. You know what's interesting about that? We all relate to that line. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. To scoff is to be like, you can judge me, to heck with you. You know what I'm saying? Like that. But that I made a host of fair weather friends. We relate to that. I made a host of fair weather friends. To be a fair weather friend, or to have a fair weather friend, is a friend that is only with you in the good times. So he's saying, I made a host of anyone here have some fair weather friends, some friends that were only there when the booze was flowing, the drugs were plentiful, you know what I mean? Fair weather friends. And I will let you know, my experience is it takes me a little bit of inventory to see that I too was a fair weather friend. It's like, oh girl, calling me out. I don't see it at first. I got to get some inventory to see it. So drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. And what I would like you to do is, if you're writing in your book, and I hear that's what the cool kids do, is make a little note that says the physical allergy. Because what we're seeing is once he starts to drink, it continues throughout the day and into the night. So what we're seeing is the inability to control the amount that he drinks once he starts to drink. That is the physical allergy. Now, can I relate to that idea that once I start, it continues long past other people drinking, long past I should be drinking? Can I relate to that physical allergy? And then it says, the remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. And I know I don't need to explain that because we all understand that. Absolutely no problem. So the remonstrances. So the remonstrances is that idea, like the criticisms, the concern, the like, hey, Bill, you can't be drinking as much as you're drinking. Hey, Bill, I'm worried about you. Bill, I'm concerned about your health. Bill, you can't. Bill, you cannot show up drunk to this like event. You know, that's the remonstrances of his friends. So the concerns, the criticisms, and it says terminated, which is ended. So the concerns from his friends ended in a row. Now, those of you in the UK, you guys know what a row is. That's a fight. We don't use that. Row, not row. Row. And that's a fight. So basically, what's happened is Bill Wilson's being told, hey, we're worried about your drinking. Hey, we're concerned about your drinking. We're concerned about your behavior. And Bill Wilson is like, go F yourself. Don't tell me what to do. Y'all don't know me. That's verbatim. You can ask Rob or find either one of the history husbands, and they will let you know. That's what Bill was saying. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't know me. And so, and he became a lone wolf. So he's losing friends. He's losing relationships. Can I relate to that? Maybe not being as aggressive as I imagine Bill to be in my historical context. I'm imagining Bill on an episode of Maury from the 90s. Y'all don't know me. You can't tell me what to do. I missed school a lot when I was a kid. That's what I would do, is watch episodes of Maury. I'm well adjusted. It's fine. But can I relate to that? Can I relate to losing people in my life who were concerned about my drinking, who are criticizing my drinking or my drug use or whatever? Can I relate to that, beginning to get to that place of isolation? And it says there were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. So he and Lois are starting to fight, and there's starting to be some problems in the relationship. And it says there have been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. And I want you to know, the first few times I read this book by myself without somebody, or like heard it in a meeting, you know what I pegged? Because I didn't like Bill. I didn't like the guy. We're besties now. We send each other friendship bracelets. Not true. Don't tell the history husbands I said that, or do tell them. But you know, I'm like, oh, I know what that means. That means the only thing that prevented Bill Wilson from cheating is he was too drunk to get it out. That's what that means. I know that's what that means. And Bill, I don't relate to you. I don't know. I'm snapping. I don't. I think I went back to the 90s in the Maury Povich with where the teenage girls, and then they'd get sent to like a thing. And anywho, but I would read that and I'd be like, oh, gross, disgusting, and he's a misogynist. You know, I would be affronted. But the truth is, Bill Wilson really did love Lois. And what is my experience? Well, I don't know about you, but I'll tell you about me. My experience is that I did things when drinking that I would not ever do when I was sober. When I was drinking, I crossed lines that I would never cross. I would never want to cross. And sexual lines that I would never want to cross. And I know I'm the only one that did that. And it's only Bill and I with our friendship bracelets over here that can relate to that. But that's my experience. And again, can I relate to that idea of crossing lines I never wanted to cross as the result of the inability to control the amount that I take once I start to drink? Is that my experience? You know, in 1929, I contracted Gulf fever. which, whew, golf fever, it's a highly contagious. Now, I'm just kidding. Uh, I just wanted to give, I just wanted to give Rob a little heart attack. He's like, oh no, yeah, it was. It's a bloodborne illness. Golf fever, you need quite a lot of insulin and antibiotics to get rid of it. No. Golf fever just means he got like super jazzercised. That's a page word, not a bill word. He just got super jazzercised about golf. That's what that means. So in 1929, he got excited about golf. This does not make Bill Wilson alcoholic, but we're going to point out some things and let's just see if we can relate to that. I have zero interest in golf. It's not my jam. So I don't relate to that. But doesn't here ever get a little hyper fixated on something? Like, again, does not make you an alcoholic, doesn't make you an addict, but I just like to relate to Bill. And when I hear ever have like a hobby and it's like, don't tell me what to do, I'm busy crocheting, like get off my back, uh, get a little like that. So he gets all excited about golf. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud, while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Now, Walter Hagen, he was one of the most prolific golfers of all time. He won 11 majors. So you can write Tiger Woods if that's like a equivalent, like that works in your brain. Yeah, sports. I'll give it a yeah, sports for golf. Go sports. Uh, and I'll continue the sports thing going because if you're like, girl, I am really not a golf gal. I don't really relate. I don't even get kind of the Tiger Woods reference. Think Serena or Venus Williams for tennis. Think Wayne Gretzky for hockey. I was just waiting for the Canadians to get it. Yeah. What about Michael Jordan for the basketball, or LeBron James or Kobe? I realize if I mention all three, there's going to be a debate. Unfortunately, the chat's not share for everyone to share all. So otherwise, that prevented the Zoom bombers, but also it prevents that rigorous debate about like, no, it's LeBron James. I actually don't think you guys would do that. But just, and so when it says, we went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started to overtake Walter Hagen. Can I relate to that idea that I cannot do something if I'm not the best at it? To start an activity, to start a hobby, and I need to be the best. I need to win. Some of you may have ruined some family get-togethers over Monopoly. I don't like that game. It just leaves me with inventory to write. But like, just can I relate to that competitive spirit? And as we were reading last week, what was fueling Bill Wilson's desperate need to win? This terrible sense of inferiority, a feeling at the core of his being that who he is not enough. Can I relate to that? And it says liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. What that means is the alcoholism, the consequences of his physical allergy were catching up to him far more than he was being number one in golf. Go golf. And so it says, I began to be jittery in the morning. So we're starting to see some physical symptoms as the result of his drinking. Can I relate to that? And for me, I got sober young, so I didn't have a lot of DTs or experiences with DTs, but can I relate to having physical consequences, signs that I'm in trouble, signs that I should stop? And then chucking those in the back seat, let's get going, So it says, golf permitting drinking every day and every night. It was fun to carom around the exclusive course, which inspired such awe in me as a lad. And the exclusive course was the Equinox Country Club in Manchester, Vermont. It still exists, so if you ever want, you can check it out, but I think it's still pretty hoity-toity. Also, it's Equinox, and because it's hoity-toity, all the hoits and the toits, that was the stupidest thing I said today. So far, stay tuned. There's more. It's spelled Ekwanok, which is shocking because I would expect it to be like have a Q and a U and an X. You know what I mean? Like I'm like equinox, but it's Equinox. And this is exclusive course. And it's important to understand just the context is golf originated, especially in the United States, as a white man's game that was for the rich. It was a rich white man's game, which is to say it was for those of an upper class, which is to say it was a way to prove that he was important. And that's what he's after. Can I relate to that? And it says, I had acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. If you can tell by my complexion, I don't relate to that. I am pale and then I burn. I will burn by moonlight. So I don't relate to the impeccable coat of tan, let me tell you. But here's my experience. That coat of tan, to me, it screams to me like a coat of armor. You know, he's got that sword, that weapon to prove to the world that he is important, that he is worth and value. You know what I'm saying? And this is his coat of tan. See, I'm worthy. I'm worthy because I'm golfing. You know what I mean? I'm hanging out with the rich people. I'm hanging out with the important people. Look at me. I have some worth. That's what it screams, at least to me. The local banker watched me roll fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. So Bill is putting in lots of money, taking out lots of money, and the banker's like, we'll see how long this will last. Foreshadowing. Next paragraph is where that is. You didn't have to wait long. I won't do super long cliffhangers here. So it says, abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. So this, I believe it was Bloody Monday, and it was the stock market crash that happened in October of 1929, as it says, that thrust the United States and later the world into the Great Depression. So the value of stocks absolutely plummeted. And I'm going to point something out. Bill Wilson, all his money is in the stock market. All his sense of esteem and worth and value, except for the stuff that he can get from golfing, is tied up in the stock market. So let's see how he responds to this. So it says, after one of those days of inferno. So it's like after one of those days of absolute hell. One of those days of hell. It says, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. Wobbled. I am going to pause on that word wobble, because you know who wobbles? Alcoholics and penguins. Those are the only wobblers. I'm telling you, he probably wasn't a penguin. We haven't run that by the history husbands yet. Rob has not definitively proved he's not a penguin, but only an alcoholic is going to wobble. It is a sign that he's got the physical allergy. Anyone here ever drink themselves into a wobble? You know? And it says wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. So he's going from a hotel bar where he was drinking to a brokerage office, essentially back to work. And it then goes on to say it was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market had closed. Why would he be going to work? And it goes on to say the ticker still clattered. Why would he have to go to work to check the ticker? So what happened? Well, what likely happened is this was probably a really stressful time for those in finance, for those in that industry. And I have a feeling maybe some of them went out for lunch and just had a couple drinks to, try to calm down. And maybe not. Maybe it was just Bill going for lunch by himself, and he goes for lunch at a hotel bar and he has a couple drinks. And if he was drinking with other coworkers, where did they go? They had one drink. This is mind-boggling, you guys, and then went back to work. That's what they did. That is not what Bill did, nor what I would do. What did Bill do? He drank up until 8 o'clock, from noon until 8, and then probably later on. You know what I mean? Like, does that sound familiar? That once I start, I can't control the amount that I take. And right there, we see a sign of the physical allergy again. So if you're writing in your book, you can make a little note, the physical allergy. So the ticker still clattered. Now the ticker in our modern times is if you put on the business channel, you can tell I definitely don't, because I called it the business channel. I don't think that's what it's called. But it's where they have the finances that go at the bottom of the screen, and that's the ticker in our modern context. Back in the day, it was a physical piece of paper that would be written upon by a machine. And and so it would just tell you what had happened to the stocks, whether the stocks had gone up and the value of shares. And he says, I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ negative 32. It had been 52 that morning. So just like today, every company is going to have nowadays, I believe it's 4-letter index on the stock market. Back then, for your companies, they only needed 3. And XYZ is an anonymous placeholder. The actual company was PFK, Pennick and Ford. You do not need to know this. This information will not keep you sober. But if you want to win at AA trivia, I got you. You know what I mean? I'm here. We'll do our like AA. We'll be on a team. We'll be on a team. We'll crush it. Go team. See, it doesn't always have to be sports. Pennick and Ford. And when it says it was negative 32, it had been 52 that morning. So that morning, when Bill Wilson did show up to work, good for him, that it was, if you had invested $1 in Pennick and Ford in the morning, you would have had $52. And by that night, by the time the stock market closed, you were owing $32. So it was done. And imagine you didn't invest $1. Imagine you had invested 100, 520 to negative 320, 1,000, more than that, how it gone, done. And an interesting thing is I live in the province of Canada called Alberta. And Texas doesn't like when we do this, but it's sort of the Canadian equivalent of Texas. What I mean by that is cowboys and ranching and a whole lot of oil and gas. And maybe you guys didn't know, but there was this huge oil and gas crash that happened a number of years ago, because I'm terrible at time orientation. I'm like, I don't know how long ago that was, but it was a while. In fact, there was a time where the price of oil was negative $50. So a very similar situation. Now, clearly, I am not in any sort of high finance. I'm not even doing tutoring anymore. Blessing for everyone. But I would see, people lose their jobs and massive companies downsizing. And a lot of what people were doing at that time were doing everything they could to try to save their job, to salvage their job, or to go back to school or get into another industry. Like, they were trying to do what they could. And where's Bill? Bill's drinking it away. And I just want to point that out. There's this crisis, and he can't stay sober for it. So I was finished, and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. And so what was happening is the newspapers would report, and there probably were suicides, but it was overreported. The newspapers made it seem like people were jumping out of these like high story windows en masse. And that's what Bill Wilson is reading. And again, just like the tombstone, what matters is what Bill reads. And Bill Wilson is reading men like him in his line of business who are taking their life as the result of the predicament that he is in. And this is Bill Wilson's response. Page 3, I had arrived. Now we're going to see what happens. This is his response to the idea of people taking their life as a result of this situation. That disgusted me. I would not jump. Disgusts me. I would not jump. So that's not even an option for him. I went back to the bar. And what you can do is you can make a little note that that is that ease and comfort. We're going back to the cycle. That is that ease and comfort. He is still getting a sense of ease and comfort. That's what it's from. And so it's working for him. And so, and I love, if you're wanting, like, what does that sense, that feeling of ease and comfort look like? I think we all know, but just to contextualize, here it is. And I'm gonna read it how Bill was probably experiencing it, where it's a little like, my friends, it dropped 7 million since 10 o'clock. So what? So what? You know, when you go a little, so what? Oh, I think there's a song that goes like that. Sorry, that just clicked. That'll be stuck in my head all day. I'm sorry for all of those who did not want that little earworm in there. My bad. So what? Tomorrow is another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. He is getting his sense of ease and comfort. So what we are seeing is alcohol is still working for him. Alcohol is still a solution for him. Alcohol is still giving him this sense of ease and comfort. And it says, the next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. Now, you do not need to write this down. And the reason you don't need to write it down, but you absolutely can, is you will remember it. Unfortunately, you will remember it forever. His friend in Montreal is Dick Johnson. So you will always, I'm so sorry, you will always remember that. But you can write it down if you want. So his friend in Montreal, he had plenty of money left and thought I'd better go to Canada. And one of the things I want to point out, this is 1930. So this happened in the year 1930, and the company is Green Shields and Co., like Green Shields and Company. And I love doing international meetings because I love the idea of showing up and be like, oh, better go to Canada. Great plan. It's not like there's any alcoholics in Canada. Am I right? Rob, Francine. Oh, we got a whole bunch. Kathy, I'm gonna scroll. Like, oh, we got some Canadians. Wherever we go, there we are. So, and I thought I'd better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. And this is what I want to point out. So often when we talk about, oh, but the stock market crash happened to everyone. Yeah, it did. Just like, some big world events that happen to everyone. But now Bill Wilson is back. He's back in a sort of I had arrived sort of place. He is back. He's back making money. He's living it large and in charge. Billy Dove's hanging out. He's having a great time. And we're going to see what happens. It says, by the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. Now is when I go on this is planned, and I apologize, Napoleon tangent. I could share a screen, but I just think it's fun that I have a little notebook. So this guy's Napoleon, little guy. He was average height. That was some British propaganda because they were at war with him. But I said little guy because I'm holding him like this. So Napoleon. And so who's this Napoleon guy? So Napoleon was the Emperor of France. Now, I want to point out why this metaphor is so perfect for Bill Wilson. So Napoleon, he came to power in France. And who was in power in France before Napoleon was the French monarchy. Now, I don't believe this or subscribe to this belief, but let's rock and roll with this metaphor, or R&B with this metaphor if you want. It's just music style. Country music with this metaphor, you do what you want. So silly. But in this metaphor, who was in charge before but the French monarchy? And the French monarchy, they believed, or they were telling people, so people would believe it, that God had chose them to be in power. And that's why, they would try to, this bloodline, and why the crown goes from descendant to descendant to descendant is because God said, this bloodline needs to be the rulers of France. Now, when Napoleon came to power, there's this famous painting, and I always reference this famous painting. And before the meeting, I never remember that I reference it. Why don't I look? You don't have to. You can if you want, Rob. That's lovely of you. I can see his I'm going to look things up face, which is lovely. It's this famous painting of the coronation of Napoleon. And in it, you'll see Napoleon, and he is putting this laurel wreath, this golden wreath on his own head, crowning himself. Now, before Napoleon, what would happen, and you can in the painting, you can kind of see the Pope that's right there, and the Pope's like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that, my guy. Come for the art history as well. It's a very accurate interpretation of that. Hey, bro, I'm the Pope. I'm supposed to put that on your head. And so before Napoleon, as the Pope would put the crown on the ruler's head as a sign that this has been ordained by God. And Napoleon's like, I'm putting it on my own head. I have decided. Now, I do not have that level of unmitigated gall. My gall is heavily mitigated. What I mean by that is I wasn't going around wearing a tiara, which I always get nervous when I talk about tiaras because I think I am not a tiara human, and somebody's going to end up giving me a tiara. But like, I don't go around with my little tiara thinking I am so great. I am the queen of everyone and everything. Look at me. I'm Queen Paige, rocking and rolling. No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. But let me tell you, I did think beyond a shadow of a doubt I knew what was best. I did think beyond a shadow of a doubt I knew what was best for me in my life. And was I not in the role of Queen Page in my own life? Can I relate to that? Now, so Napoleon, he comes to power and then, he gets involved in a land war with Russia in the winter, which is an oopsie doops, historically speaking. Again, it's an oopsie doops. Getting in a land war with Russia in the winter. Don't do that. So he got his butt kicked. And they're like, oh, okay, Napoleon, absolutely not. You're not allowed to be in charge anymore. But they couldn't kill him because if they kill him, they'll make him a martyr. So they exiled him to this tiny island in the Mediterranean called Elba. And so that was what Bill Wilson felt like when the stock market crashed. He felt like he was exiled to this tiny island, and he's shivering there. Although it's a Mediterranean island, so it wouldn't be that cold. But he's there, and he doesn't have his power and prestige just like Napoleon. Well, Napoleon was like, JK, just jokes, bro. And it comes back to France. He's like, I'm in charge again. Suck it. That's a quote from Napoleon. It's very historically accurate. But like in French, he said suck it, but in French. And so he got to be the ruler again. And that's what Bill Wilson is thinking is happening right now. Like, I am in Canada, I'm in Montreal, they speak French. It's a bilingual place. I am in charge. I had arrived. Look at me go. And France was like, you're gone. You're gone. We're going to kick you to this island, St. Helena. It's the middle of the Atlantic. It's incredibly difficult to get to, like a month by boat. You know what I mean? Like, it is not. And that's where he spent the rest of his days. And Bill Wilson's like, that's not going to happen to me. Followed by that immediately happening to Bill Wilson in the next sentence. Exactly. And so it says, and so this is Bill Wilson's second exile. He's getting kicked off to St. Helena of his life, getting kicked off his island or his place of importance in, his life. And it says, but drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. And I want to point something out. Drinking caught up with him, not the economy caught up with him, not the stock market crashed in Canada. And then what caught up with him was his physical allergy, the inability to control the amount once he started to drink. He drank his way into losing that job. I know this is a stretch. And I'm sure, and I know most of you won't relate to this, but has anyone ever lost a job as a result of their drinking? I know, what a crazy concept. Anyone ever lose a job that was of vital importance? Now, bear with me, because I know after you lost it, I didn't want it anyways, because that's what I was like. I didn't need that stupid job. They weren't good to me anyways, But did I ever lose a job as the result of my inability to control the amount that I take once I start? The consequences of my physical allergy. Can I relate to that? And this time we stayed broke. We went to live with my wife's parents. Oh no. Oh no. What does that mean? He goes to live with the in-laws. Anyone here excited about that proposition? Anyone's like, I had arrived at my in-laws' doorstep. Ugh, ugh. And keep in mind, a lot of times as we go through this book, I really, really strongly encourage us to lay aside some of the gender roles of the 1930s, or even like old ideas about gender roles. Like truly, just because when I lay those aside, I actually see deeper the context of what the book is talking about. But in this case, I think it's helpful to hold on to that vision in this moment. And what I mean by that is Bill Wilson is a man in the 1930s. And I'm assuming that there were some standards that society was trying to hold Bill Wilson towards, which is that you are a man and that you are a provider and you show up and you make money and you provide for your wife. And now he's living at his wife's parents' place. Now I don't got no shame about that. Like I don't judge that one bit. But can I relate to my alcoholism leading me to live a life where I feel like a loser and a failure, and I'm not showing up and I'm not doing the things I need to do? Can I relate to that? Now, his wife's parents lived at 182 Clinton Street in Brooklyn, New York. 182 Clinton. So you can write that down. That still exists. And I would say, like, you can see it. Like, people live there, so maybe don't visit. Uh, but what's interesting is Bill and Lois lived there until 1938. They lost the home, the family home, in 1938. And what, 38, 39? What are you're mouthing words? 38, 39? Just put it, I'm like, I can't lip read that well.
1939,
Oh,
because the big book had been released and they got kicked out of their place.
oh, that makes sense. I had 38 as the year. No, it's all good. And what's important, and so the big book's already been released. And what was I emphasizing? They lost it in sobriety. They lost the house in sobriety. A lot of times we think sobriety means I got to be successful financially, or I'm not going to have I'm sober now, so there can't be any hard times, there can't be any struggles. You know, he lost it in sobriety. Bill and Lois were homeless in sobriety. And I don't know too many, genuinely, almost every sponsee I ever work with has a fear of financial insecurity. That's a human thing, but I've never had a sponsee who stayed sober who ended up homeless. And so Bill Wilson's one of the few, and it's an important thing that my life and my sobriety is not contingent upon my external circumstances. So I found a job, and this was a job again working as an investigator. So he was doing what he was doing way back, where he's investigating these companies, and he was making $100 a week, which was good pay in those days. And he desperately needed that money because he and Lois had gotten into $60,000 in debt. $60,000. So they needed that money. And then they lost it as the result of a brawl with a taxi driver. Do you know who is brawling with taxi drivers? Alcoholics. People who have the physical allergy. Only somebody who does not have the ability to control the amount they take once they start to drink is drinking themselves into I'm a brawl with the cab driver. You know what I'm saying? And I used to do a big book study with somebody who really did not appreciate my fun facts even a little bit. And so it was the one time I brought up Bill Wilson's friend in Montreal was Dick Johnson. And when we got to this part of the book, the person was like, "Oh, why don't you tell me who that taxi cab driver was?" I will tell you, I have looked so hard, so hard to try to find who that taxi cab. Howard knows. He's like, oh yeah, I was trying to prove that, like, I was trying to prove that guy wrong. There's nothing that'll get me more motivated than be like, I bet you can't find that. I'm like, I will put on all of my Al-Anon hats and I will find them. And I have not been able to, which is very disappointing. Yeah, you know. Yeah. Oh, who's brawling with taxi cab drivers? Alcoholics. It says, mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. And I want to contextualize this. This is in 1930, and it's going to be up until 1935, essentially early, 1935. very, very early 1935. That's what he's talking about. So often when when I was young, uh, I know some of you are like, when you were young, Paige, don't say that. When I was younger, when I first got here, I would read it as like, okay, so we had 5 years here of drinking, 2 years here of drinking. But no, he's going to describe his next 5 years as we go. So my wife, so mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. So Lois was working at different department stores. What she would do is she would like design like the ends of shelves, like the displays and stuff. And she worked at different places like Macy's, and she was making $19 a week. So there's $60,000 in debt. He had lost his $100 a week job, and they're living off of Lois's $19 a week. And again, can I relate to that? Like, I am messing up my life so bad, and I want to show up to life, and I want to be somebody, but Lois has, or Bill Wilson has Lois, his wife, supporting her. And I would imagine that sense of failure and inferiority and who I am is not enough. Can I relate to some of that? I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. Anyone know what it's like to be an unwelcome hanger-on? By the way, if you're here at this big book study, you're not an unwelcome hanger-on. I'm so glad you're here, and I genuinely mean that. I love you. But do you rely? Because I know what it's like, man. Nobody wanted me around. I'd burn those bridges. I had an ex, charming fellow, and he used to say, "I don't burn bridges. I blow them up." Which later proved to be accurate and was a bit of a red flag that I promptly ignored, but like, that's kind of who I am. I'm somebody that I would burn my bridges. People didn't want me around anymore. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. So we're going from this liquor being fun, exhilarating, exciting, important, to now I need it. And I relate to getting to that place where it's not I want it, I need it. Bathtub gin. So bathtub gin, what we're talking about is we're in the era of prohibition. So we're talking about home brewed distilled alcohol, where you can't, it's not as scientific as, you know what I mean? It's not a government monitored sort of thing. So there's not like health standards with it. So that, moonshine, we're talking about moonshine. So that sort of thing. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day and often 3 got to be routine. 2 bottles and often 3 of probably very strong gin. That's how bad it is. And it says sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would try to pay down my debts. That's not in there. Try to move us out of Lois's, the in-laws house, because nobody living with their in-laws is just to be there. That might not be true. Some of you might have lovely in-laws. But no. Where is he spending his money? He gets a little bit of money. Where does it go to? And I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. He's paying down the places where he can get alcohol. That's what he's doing. He's paying down those debts. Can I relate to that? Money would come in, and where would it immediately go? To the places that I could drink, the places that I could get drugs. And it says this went on endlessly. And we're going to have a look, and we're going to see, do we think Bill Wilson is in trouble? Let's have a look, and let's see what we think if Bill Wilson is in trouble. So it says this went on endlessly. I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. So he's got some signs of DT's physical withdrawal symptoms. Like he is in, sorry, let's decide if he's in trouble. I'm not going to say. A tumbler full of gin, so a tumbler of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer. That's a 6-pack. So he needs a tumbler of gin, and a 6-pack would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. That is before breakfast. That is to eat. Does that sound like that's a manageable situation, or does that sound like, man, you are in trouble? You're in trouble, you're in trouble, you're in trouble. But this is what Bill Wilson sees. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. Yeah, I got this. And is it possible that if I were to objectively put my drinking, my using, my compulsive behavior, like out on the table this is what it is, that like no, Paige, I got this. I don't need to do steps. I don't have a problem, would be just as insane as nevertheless, I thought I could control the situation. There's a level of denial that we seem to have. Probably because we get that sense of ease and comfort, and I don't want to give up the thing that feels like my answer. So I can't see it for what it really is. And there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope. So we're talking in this 5 years. So he is not a daily drinker every single day, 365 days a year. He's having periods of sobriety. So again, did I ever use that? Hey, but I was able to put it down here and there as a reason for why I'm not an alcoholic or why I'm not an addict or you know what I mean? So did Bill. And it says gradually things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. And it's like things were not good. Things were not good to start with. You know what I'm saying? Like that was not a good situation. And it's only getting worse. And I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. There it is. If you have your copy of Lois Remembers to hand, again, not mandatory for this big book study. I just like to pop into Lois Remembers. Why? Because I have it in reach. All my other books are a little hard to grab. But if you have it to hand, if you want to pop over to page 34. Now, what we're referencing at this point in Lois Remembers actually happens earlier in Bill's actual story. But to me, it just tells me about the power of alcoholism. And when it talks about his wife becoming ill, it just always makes me think of this. So, in May 1923, the improbable happened. And so this is Lois Wilson, Bill Wilson's wife, writing. And just a little bit of context, Bill and Lois desperately wanted children. They desperately wanted to be parents. That was a goal they had. That was a dream they had. But unfortunately, Lois was having miscarriages. And to be quite specific, ectopic pregnancies, which are not viable, which is to say a miscarriage. In May 1923, the improbable happened, a third ectopic. I was tutoring a young girl in Latin when I felt the first symptoms. After another operation, I made a quick recovery. By then, both tubes and the complete cystic ovary had been removed. A small portion of the ovary was kept so that I might retain my feminine characteristics, it was said. Bill was often too drunk for days at a time to come see me at the hospital. Can I relate to letting my family down in that way, not being able to show up for those I love? We had both deeply desired a family, but after my second ectopic, Bill and I knew positively that we could never have children. My tubes had apparently been closed since birth. Bill, even when drunk, took this overwhelming disappointment with grace and with kindness to me. But his drinking had been increasing steadily. It seemed, after all hope of having children had died, his bouts with alcohol had become even more frequent. I knew I had done nothing to prevent our having children, yet somehow I could not help feeling guilty. So how could I blame him for the increase in his drinking? This kind of thinking made me try harder to understand him and to be tolerant when he was drunk. But there were many times when I lost my temper. He never hit me, but I hit him. I remember with shame one time towards the end of his drinking when I was so angry as he lay drunk on the bed that I beat his chest with both my fists as hard as I could. Several years after we learned we could never have children of our own, and when we felt financially able, we applied to the Spence Chapin Child Adoption Agency for a baby. As time went on, we heard nothing. We inquired several times, and the agency always replied that the suitable child had not yet been found. But Bill was always sure that the real reason was his drinking. Only a short time ago, in 1974, I learned that was so. We had given to Spence Chapin the names of a few of our friends as references. One of my best and oldest friends responded to the agency by saying that she considered that we would not make reliable parents because Bill drank to excess. Can I relate to my drinking causing harm to those around me? You know what I mean? Losing hopes, losing goals, losing dreams, losing relationships. Like that is the power of this illness, this thing that they wanted more than anything else. And this illness prevented them from having it. So next week we will kick it off in the Applejack story. The more I go through this book study, that seems like the slower I get. I'm not getting faster, I'm getting slower. But join us and we'll hear the Applejack story because it's a gooder. And I'll stop the recording and we can all wrap it up with a prayer.